Your identity is not fixed. You were not born with it. You practiced it. And the reason your life might not be changing could be because you're still practicing an identity that you don't actually want. So your identity is fluid. And the good news, and honestly, what I think is really, really exciting, is that you have the power to change it at any point in your life. And I'm not talking about pretending to be someone you're not or like faking identity paperwork or anything like that. I'm talking about who you are being. So if you're struggling with chronic health issues, for example, you can take every supplement on the planet. You can do all the breath work and the cold plunges and the nervous system exercises and eat the perfect diet. But if your identity hasn't changed, your life won't either. And this is true for virtually any area of your life that you want change in or improvement in. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before we go any further, we probably need to address the gigantic elephant in the room. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I am recording this video in a Wonder Woman costume. So if you're listening in on audio, on one of the audio platforms, this would probably be a really good episode for you to hop on over to YouTube and tune in to watch on video. But anyway, this isn't a midlife crisis. There is actually a reason for this. Wonder Woman is not just a costume. It's an identity. Identity is one of the most powerful forces shaping your life. Whether we're talking about your health, your relationship, your finances, your happiness, your confidence, or just the way you show up in the world. Most people think that their identity is something that just is, right? But the truth is, identity is something that gets created. We create it slowly over time through the thoughts that we repeat, the stories we tell ourselves, right? The emotions that you live in, really big part of your identity, and the people that you surround yourself with. And once that identity is locked in, it begins kind of quietly shaping everything else in your life. So today, we are going to be talking about identity, where it comes from, why most people accidentally trap themselves into an identity that keeps them stuck, and how you can begin consciously stepping into the version of you who already lives the life that you want to be living. So let's get into it. Welcome to Rewired and Unstoppable. I'm Tammy Anderson, and this is where belief rewiring meets nervous system regulation, so you can create the health, success, happiness, and joy you want in every area of your life. Let's get into it. Let me tell you where this started for me. So if you don't know my background, I grew up in rural Idaho in absolute abject poverty. My mom struggled with really severe mental illness. My dad was a big alcoholic and not even home most of the time. But when he was around, he was angry, unpredictable, abusive, scary. So most of the time in my house, there was no food in the refrigerator. You know, there would be times when the only thing that I remembered was maybe a bag of limp carrots and some moldy condiments. There was no soap, no laundry detergent, no toothpaste, no toilet paper. So none of the bare necessities. The free school lunch was usually my only real meal. And that was, obviously when school was in session. And if my siblings and I wanted something to eat, and, my siblings and I would often head down to the convenience store down the road to buy candy bars for dinner with food stamps. That was what dinner was. My clothes were either things that my grandmother picked up for me at yard sales or weird stuff that my mom sewed on her sewing machine. And so at school, naturally, I was the dirty, weird, probably smelly kid that none of the other kids wanted to be around. But through this chaotic childhood, there was one thing that kept my imagination alive and really saved me, and that was Wonder Woman. I would watch Wonder Woman in my grandmother's house because we didn't have a TV at our house, and I just became completely obsessed with that show. And I would watch her in just complete admiration. She was just so strong and powerful and confident and fearless. And as a little girl, I would just spend hours imagining grown-up me as Wonder Woman. I mean, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't wishing. In my imagination, I was her. I could see myself in the outfit, the bracelets, the strength, the confidence, the adventures, the beauty, right? I think it was a way for me to escape the reality of my chaotic and unsafe home life, right? You kind of have to do things to escape emotionally from that kind of environment. So the identity lived inside of my imagination long before anything in my external life resembled that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that imagination, that fantasy that I was having, was planting little seeds. Identity doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's built through repetition, through the thoughts you repeat about yourself, through the emotional states that you live in, through the behaviors that you practice every single day. And something else that most people overlook is your identity is heavily shaped by the people that you surround yourself with. So if you spend enough time around people who are negative and cynical and defeated, eventually that's going to start becoming part of your identity too. If you spend time around people who believe in possibility, who take action, who think differently, who think big, that starts shaping you as well. Who you surround yourself by matters. And it matters a lot. So I want to fast forward many, many years into my future. In my late 20s, something happened that was really profound and changed my life. Now, at this point in my life, I was living in anger. I was the adult version of that little girl who had taken on all of the pain and trauma and chaos from childhood, and I hadn't processed it yet. And that's the version of me that was living at that time of life. So around my late 20s, I had a really, really close friend. She was at that time my best friend in the world. And she broke up with me. What I mean by that is she just ghosted me. She disappeared from my life. Several months went by. She avoided any contact with me. We hadn't had an argument or, any kind of disagreement. And so I really didn't understand why she just disappeared. So months later, when we reconnected, I asked her what happened. And she said, I just can't be around you anymore because I feel energetically sucked dry every time we're together, anytime I talk to you, because you have nothing to say that's positive. Everything that comes out of your mouth is negative, and I just can't be around it anymore. I was completely devastated. But I had to admit to myself that she was right. It took a really long, hard look in the mirror to realize that instead of becoming the Wonder Woman I had imagined as a kid, I had slowly taken on the identity of someone shaped by the past. I was the victim of my childhood. And when that friendship ended, I had to take a really hard look in the mirror and ask myself something that was really hard. Who do you actually want to be? Do I want to be the person that people avoid when they see me coming in the grocery store? Or do I want to be the person that other people are excited to see? The person that other people look up to? And that honestly was the very beginning of a really massive identity shift for me. So now let's talk about how this shows up in the work that I do today. People come to me completely burnt out, overwhelmed, frustrated. They've tried everything. They've done all the protocols, the diets, the lifestyle changes, the supplements, the detoxes, right? They've done it all. The breath work, the somatic practices, the cold plunging, all the things. And they're still stuck. And here's the reality that I want all of my clients and you to understand. You cannot out-biohack a mind that is running catastrophic thoughts all day long. Hey, quick pause from the show. If this episode is landing for you, if you're starting to notice how often your mind defaults to what's wrong, what's missing, what's broken, what's not working, what should be happening, that matters more than you probably realize. So we talk a lot about detoxing these days. Parasites, mold, heavy metals, candida, sugar, alcohol. And yes, I live in the functional medicine world. I run detoxes with my clients all the time. But there is one detox that impacts virtually every area of your life, your health, your relationships, your finances, your connection, your sense of safety in the world. And it's the one that most people never even consider. And it's often why all the other stuff doesn't stick long term. It's the detox of complaining, because that constant mental output keeps your nervous system stuck in stress. And when that happens, nothing truly changes long term. That's why I created the 2-week complaining detox challenge to help you take this awareness and actually put it into practice in real time. So if you want to join us, you'll find it linked in the description below. All right, let's get back to the episode. Breath work can't fix that. Cold plunging can't fix that. Somatic practices can't fix that. No amount of ashwagandha can fix that. Because the most powerful nervous system regulating tool that you have is your thinking. The thoughts that are running through your mind all day long. And it is also the most powerful nervous system deregulating tool. So you have the power to use it in whichever way you choose. Now, in a previous episode, and I'll link it up at the end of this episode, I talked about research showing that different emotional states actually have different vibrational frequencies. And when someone spends their days in emotions like fear and anger and frustration and resentment, those states keep the nervous system stuck in survival, what I call your stuck state. But on the flip side of that, elevated emotional states, things like gratitude and joy and peace and love, those have a higher vibrational signal, which signals safety to the body, to the nervous system. So your nervous system is constantly responding to the emotional chemistry, literally chemistry, created by your thoughts. Your brain is a pharmacy, right? And this means that the thoughts running through your mind all day long are either regulating your nervous system or dysregulating it. So let me give you a really simple example. Let's say 2 people decide that they're going to quit smoking. They've been long-time smokers, and they both decide, we're going to quit smoking. About a week later, they go to a social event. And at that social event, someone offers them each a cigarette. And one person says, no thanks, I'm trying to quit. The other person says, no thanks, I don't smoke. Now, technically, both of them quit a week ago, but the second person has already assumed a different identity as a non-smoker, right? They don't see themselves as someone struggling to quit or trying to quit. They see themselves as a non-smoker, right? And because identity drives behavior, that second person is far more likely to stay a non-smoker forever, right? The identity had to come first. They had to see themselves and identify themselves as a non-smoker. So the long-term result is going to follow. And this applies to literally every area of your life. So when you want a different outcome, you have to begin assuming the identity of the person who already lives that outcome before the actual result shows up in your life. That includes their thoughts, their habits, their behaviors, their emotional state. You assume the entire identity. So if you've listened to some of my previous episodes, you might already know that I struggled with chronic health issues for over 20 years. And during a big part of that time, my imagination worked against me in the worst possible way. Like, I would imagine the worst possible outcome of any and every situation. I was like a gold medal catastrophizer. I would lay awake at night, drowning in anxiety, worried that this illness was going to take me away from my boys. And I would be creating movies in my mind of my boys crying at my funeral, my kids growing up without their mom, going to their graduations and not having a mom in the audience, getting married and not having their mom there, having kids and no Grammy, right? And every time I looked in the mirror, I wasn't seeing Wonder Woman. I was seeing a sick person. And I was grieving the person that I always dreamed I was going to be. When I talked to someone, it always involved complaining about my symptoms. And because of this, my nervous system lived in a never-ending state of fight or flight. And when you're in that state, healing's just not available to you. And that was because the movies in my mind were catastrophic. And there came a point when I honestly thought that I had tried everything, that I had exhausted all my resources. I'd seen all the doctors, tried all the medications, I'd done all the surgeries, I'd seen all the different types of practitioners. And I just kind of threw my hands up in the air and gave it up to the universe. Like, I literally surrendered and stopped grabbing and grasping and striving. And each night at bedtime, I started saying prayers. And even though at the time I would have considered myself agnostic, I wasn't in the tiniest bit spiritual. But there must have been something in me that knew there's something bigger out there besides myself. So I just totally gave it up to the universe. And if I can be totally honest, it probably sounded more like bargaining with the universe, because I was repeating, when I get better, I'm going to use this experience to make the world a better place. So there was some bargaining going on there for sure. If I get this, then I'll do this, right? And at the time when this was happening, I had exactly zero idea what making the world a better place would even look like. But not long after I surrendered, something huge shifted energetically. I stumbled upon a little book called Change Your Mind and Your Life Will Follow, which was really mind-blowing for me at the time. And there was a lot of biblical and spiritual reference, and I had a hard time kind of making my way through this book, but I just kept pushing through because something was resonating. And that book introduced me to something really profound, and that's the power of your imagination. Your imagination is one of the most powerful creative forces you have. Every outcome in your life begins first in your imagination. We're creating our lives minute by minute through every thought and every action we take. Every invention in the world, if you look around you, anything around you, every building, every invention, every achievement, someone imagined it first. And that's the same thing for your identity. So I started using my imagination differently. Instead of imagining my little boys standing at my funeral crying, I started imagining myself sitting in the audience at my son's graduations. And this wasn't just a hope and a wish and a vague thought. I was there. I put myself there. I made those mental scenes real. just like I had when I was imagining myself being Wonder Woman when I was a little girl, right? I could feel the heat of the sun at the outdoor ceremony, right? I could hear the people talking around me, the chatter of conversation. I could smell the flowers in the air. I could feel the people, the energy of the people sitting around me in the chairs. I could hear the music. I could see my son walking across the stage. So I literally created those scenes so vividly, it felt like I was actually there. And when you do that, something really powerful happens. Your nervous system starts responding as though that future is already real. Neville Goddard talks about this a lot. He's one of the pioneers of this mind-body connection thing. So your emotional state changes. Your identity begins shifting, and it's really, really powerful. So I'm going to offer you something really simple that you can do that can start helping you use your imagination in a better way to create the identity that you actually want. So grab a pen and some paper and write down 3 things. First, what do you actually want in your life? Have you ever thought about that? Like, I'm not talking about what do you want for a career? What kind of job do you want? Not defining yourself that way. What do you want your life to be like? Your health. If you're struggling with health issues, like, what would your life look like if you're in perfect health? Right? Do you want financial freedom, better relationships, more confidence, more joy, like to be more fit? What is it you want? What do you want that life to look like? Second, who are you being right now? What thoughts dominate your days? What emotions do you live in most of the time? What behaviors do you practice every day? And third, who would you be if the life you wanted already existed? How would that version of you think? How would you talk? What would you do differently every day? Like, what would your daily habits be? Who would you hang out with? Where would you live? Because if you're already that person, your thoughts would not look the same as they do right now. My thoughts aren't the same as they were a year ago. My thoughts aren't the same as they were 6 months ago because I'm always evolving and changing. Okay? And neither would your emotional state. When I was a little girl imagining Wonder Woman, I had no idea what I was doing, but I was really practicing identity. And the funny thing is that decades later, people that are close to me in my life, friends, colleagues, family members, started calling me Wonder Woman. And it happened just naturally as a byproduct of who I was being and how I showed up in life. Because I became it. So your identity is not fixed. It's practiced and it's fluid. And the moment you decide who you are becoming, everything in your life starts shifting to match it. So I challenge you right now to ask yourself, who do I want to be? What do I want my life to be like? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode today as much as I did making it in my Wonder Woman costume. I will never pass up an opportunity to dress up as Wonder Woman. And if you're ready to dig deeper into this stuff, I put some resources in the description down below for you. If you're looking for a really powerful and simple place to start, I've got my 2-week complaining detox challenge, which helps you become aware of the thought patterns that keep your nervous system stuck in survival mode. I've also got my Rewired for Healing EFT tapping program, which is designed to help you start rewiring those subconscious patterns and emotional responses that keep people feeling stuck. There's also a link to my free masterclass where I break down why a true root cause approach has to include your nervous system, not just the other things that you've been chasing, and how it actually all works together. And if you're like, all right, I'm done trying to figure this out on my own, You can use the link to apply for a freedom call, and we'll see if working together makes sense. So all those links are in the description down below. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I really do mean that. If you found this episode helpful or insightful and you're watching on YouTube, you can hit that like button and leave a comment. I love hearing what you have to say, what landed for you. And I'd also love to hear what stretched your thinking or gave you some new perspective on something today. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, following the show or leaving a quick review really helps people find these conversations, helps me expand my reach, and I really, really do appreciate it. It's totally my love language. But most important, thank you so much for being here with me today, spending your time with me. It means the world to me. I love you. I mean it. And I'll see you in the next episode.